Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
The apostle said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your slave, who has just come in from plowing or tending sheep in the field, 'Come here at once and take your place at the table'? Would you not rather say to him, 'Prepare supper for me and put on your apron and serve me while I eat and drink? Later you may eat and drink.' Do you thank the slave for doing what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were ordered to do, say, 'We are worthless slaves. We've done only what we ought to have done.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. So today's gospel lesson is a continuation of Jesus' teachings. And just prior to this section in chapter 17, Jesus has said to the disciples, if anyone hurts you, offends you, angers you, you have to forgive them. Even if it's 7 times a day, they keep coming to you and asking for forgiveness, you have to forgive them. And he says to them, also don't be a stumbling block to any little ones in the faith. That can mean children or anyone new to the faith. He says, don't be a stumbling block. You'd be better off to have a millstone tied around your neck and be thrown in the ocean than to be a stumbling block. And so the apostles, the disciples in this case, respond with what might seem like a reasonable response. Now, Jesus has just laid some pretty big requests on them, pretty high standard. And so they say, well, okay, if you want us to do that, then here's what we need. Increase our faith. Increase our faith. Because over and over again, they've heard Jesus telling them, if you want to do what God's calling you to do, if you want to heal the sick, if you want to do this, you want to do that, you need to be more faithful. Be stronger in your faith. So they say, that's fine. If you want us to do those things, increase our faith. Seems reasonable enough. And I think that probably sounds a little bit familiar. I think we've all done that. We've all had that bargaining session with God, right? Said, okay, God, if you want me to do this or that, I'm going to need a few things from you. Right? I'm going to need some things. Or if you want me to keep doing this work, or you want me to keep being so good, I'm going to need a few things in return here. I'm going to have to straighten out a few things in my life or in the lives of those around me. Now, when I say it like that, most of you would say, well, I wouldn't say that. But we've all done that to one degree or another, in some way or another. I think it's human nature. We want to bargain with God. And when the disciples ask this question, when they make this statement, they imply, just by making the statement, that this is a gift from God. That this faith can be granted to them, right? And so they've also said that they already have faith that was given by God. Which means that the faith God gave them the first time wasn't good enough. Now, whenever you're faced with a question of whether what God gave you was good enough, or whether what you're doing with it is good enough, you should always lean on the second one. Okay? Jesus isn't real impressed with this request. He says to them, look, if you had faith just the size of a mustard seed, and this is an example he's used time and time again. Another place he says it's the tiniest of all seeds. I've seen a mustard seed, it's like a little speck on your finger. smaller than a gnat. It says if you had faith just the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry bush to be uprooted and it would plant itself in the ocean. In other words, it says you don't need faith the size of a mountain to move a mountain. It says what you need, you don't need more faith. He said, we already gave you that. What you need to do is use what you got. You need to tap into the gift you've already been given. The problem here isn't a lack of faith, a lack of the gift. The problem is lack of trust in that gift. And so he goes on to chastise them a bit further. With this example of the slave, he says, how many of you would say to your slave when they come in from the field, sit down, relax, let me fix dinner for you. And when you're done eating and I've cleaned up, then I'll eat. Now, in our modern society, we might say, oh, well, I might do that. And maybe you would, I don't know. But in that time and place, that would have been a ridiculous suggestion, right? And people hearing that would have said, no, of course not. Of course we wouldn't do that. What Jesus is saying to them is, don't expect a reward for doing what you're supposed to do. If you're a servant of God, don't expect every time you go out and do something, or every time you're supposed to do something, don't expect God to back up the truck with a whole dump truck load of faith at your front door and everything else you think you need in order to go and do the work that you're called to do. God says, trust. Trust that I've given you or will give you when you need it everything that you need to do the work you've been called to do. Somebody's got a phone call. I hope it's God. Anyway, the reaction that you have. The point being, oh, guilty has confessed. That's embarrassing.
Does my face match my hair yet?
We'll just all stare at her till she's done. All right. Let me see if I can even remember where I was now. I'm just going to start over. So sometimes as human beings, we tend to want to look at God and say, you know, I need more out of this. I need you to do for me more than you're doing if you expect me to do these things. Right? Or another way of doing it is we might say, well, Lord, I've been a good person. I've tried to do right. Why am I sick? Why is my family suffering? Why are the people that I love hurting or dying? Or we look at others and have those same questions. But Jesus is saying to us, look, being a servant of God doesn't mean that everything is going to be perfect in your life. It doesn't mean that God is going to fix every problem that comes our way. It means that in the midst of it, if we can rely on God, if we can put our faith and trust in God, that we can find peace, that we can find joy, that we can find our place in the midst of the storm. That's all that we're promised. But the beauty of it is that that's all that we need as well. That's all that we need as well. So when we start trying to bargain with God, when we start trying to say, Lord, I feel like I'm deficient in my faith or my discipline or this or that or the other, We don't say to God, so you need to fix that. I mean, it's all right to say to God, I'm struggling with this. I need help. I'm not able to do this on my own. But we don't want to pass the point of saying, Lord, I trust in you. I trust that you will help me, that you will give me what I need when I need it. I trust that I can lean on you, that you will give me strength. But what we can't do is say, Lord, either you fix this or it's not going to happen. Right? I'm not going to make any effort, so you better. Which is what, at least I only speak for myself, sometimes I fall into that trap, right? That's not really a bargain. We've all been given work to do. We've all been called to serve. And we can't go into that work expecting to be thanked, expecting to be patted on the back every time we do something. We can't go into that work expecting that because we're doing good, that somehow that's going to mean that great things are going to happen to us. We go into that work expecting to serve. And through that service, expecting to find peace and joy. Expecting to trust in the Lord. And if we do that, God will build those things in our hearts and our lives that truly matter, that are lasting beyond this world. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we give you thanks for all the many blessings you bestow upon us. Pray that you would help us to discern what is truly your will, to lay down those things which are our own, which draw us away from you. Help us to seek out service not for our own reward, but rather to serve you and one another. Help us to seek those things that you offer to us, the peace, the joy, the love that you intend for our lives. All this we ask in your Son's holy name.
Amen.